My name is Hamza, and for most of my life, I served as a teacher of the Quran. I was convinced I walked the righteous path. Before reaching my teenage years, I had already committed vast sections of the Quran to memory. Community members would proudly call me a Hafiz, and elderly men at our mosque would greet me with handshakes as if I held some special significance. I was raised in a household where submission to Allah wasn't a choice, it was essential for survival. My father ruled with an iron fist, my mother remained voiceless, and our entire existence centered around mosque prayer schedules and reciting the Prophet's teachings. At 19, I began instructing children in reading the Quran. I wore my white robes like a symbol of achievement, reciting memorized verses and explaining them exactly as they had been taught to me. Questioning never crossed my mind. I couldn't allow it. To question meant rebellion, not just against Islam, but against my family, my heritage, my complete sense of self. Then came the day that changed everything. A young boy named Bilal gazed up at me and asked, "Teacher, why does Allah permit men to strike their wives?" He was referencing Surah An-Nisa 4:34, a passage I had recited countless times, but never truly examined. I hesitated. My voice faltered. I delivered the rehearsed response I had memorized. "It's merely a gentle tap, purely symbolic. Only when a woman is genuinely disobedient. It's not intended to cause harm." That evening, I returned home and read the verse repeatedly. I studied the Arabic text. I examined 3 different translations. I searched through commentary after commentary. Every source confirmed the same thing. The striking was literal. The authority was absolute. A husband was permitted to discipline his wife. I sat on my bed's edge, the Quran resting in my lap, my hands trembling. "Is this truly from God?" I whispered. I desperately wanted to believe there was a deeper meaning, that somehow I had misunderstood, that all the scholars who had taught me were mistaken. But in my heart, I recognized the truth. Sleep eluded me that night. I remained awake, wrestling with what I had discovered, with the God I thought I understood, and the doubts that had transformed from whispers to screams in my mind. It felt as though I had unearthed something toxic buried within a book I was raised to treasure. Still, I suppressed these doubts. I told myself to stop thinking, to trust the scholars, to follow the majority. I increased my fasting. I prayed with greater intensity. I pleaded with Allah to purify my heart of this confusion. But the peace I had once experienced in my prayers never returned. Days later, while preparing for class, I encountered Surah At-Tawbah 9:29. "Fight those who do not believe in Allah or the last day until they pay the jizya with willing submission and feel themselves subdued." My heart plummeted. Was this justice? Was this mercy? I thought of my Christian neighbors, families who had always shown us kindness. I remembered my childhood friend Daniel, who had given me his jacket when I was cold at school. Were these the people I was supposed to humiliate with attacks until they submitted to Islam? I couldn't reconcile it. I tried to dismiss it. I attended class. I taught my students. But when I recited that verse, I couldn't bring myself to explain it. I skipped the translation. My mouth moved, but my heart was no longer engaged. That's when something inside me shattered. It wasn't a dramatic collapse. It was quiet, like a door closing slowly behind me. I was losing my faith, not by choice, but because I could no longer sustain it. I began searching online, quietly, cautiously, using private browsing and clearing my history. I read articles by former Muslims. I watched testimonials. I saw the same anguish in their eyes that I felt in my chest. I wasn't alone. Then one night, I discovered a YouTube video titled "Ex-Muslim Quran Teacher Shares His Story." I clicked it, unaware that this video would alter the trajectory of my life. The man in the video resembled me, spoke like me, quoted the same verses I had. Then he said something I had never heard before. "I left Islam not because I hated God, but because I wanted truth more than tradition." Truth more than tradition. I paused the video. My hands shook. That night, I closed the Quran for the first time in my life and whispered a prayer that wasn't in Arabic. "God, if you are real, if you are truth, then reveal yourself to me. I don't care what it costs me. I just want to know you." And he responded. but not in the way I expected and not without a price. The following days were filled with silence. I continued going to the mosque. I still led prayers. I still taught the children. But something within me had transformed. It was like wearing a mask that no longer fit. I would speak the words of the Quran, but inside my soul was crying out. Every verse I once cherished now felt like a puzzle I couldn't solve. Or worse, a wound I couldn't heal. I stopped attending Friday sermons. I told people I was ill. I began spending more time in solitude, staying in my room, avoiding my father's gaze. He noticed. "You are losing your light, Hamza," he said one evening. "Maybe you have a jinn problem." He was serious. He wasn't being sarcastic. In our world, doubt wasn't viewed as a human struggle. It was seen as a demonic assault, but I knew better. My struggle wasn't with jinn, it was with truth. Late one night, I found myself reading comments on a Christian forum. I wasn't seeking to convert. I didn't even trust Christians. All my life, I had been told they were misguided, lost, and cursed. But something about their words touched me. They spoke of a God who was personal, who didn't demand blind submission, but offered love. One post stopped me in my tracks. Jesus doesn't want slaves, he wants sons. Sons. I sat there staring at that sentence. I had always viewed God as a master, and myself as a servant. We were never meant to be close. We obeyed him from fear, not love. Even paradise was earned through actions, not relationship. But what if there was more? What if I had been wrong my entire life? The questions came faster now. Why did Islam teach that Allah was unknowable? Why did we repeat phrases like, Allah knows best, but never feel something was missing? Why did the Prophet marry a 9-year-old? Why were apostates sentenced to death? I couldn't stop them. One night, I opened the Bible online. I began reading the Gospel of John. I didn't know what to expect. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Something about that sentence shook me. It was poetry and power. Then I read, "The Word became flesh, and made his dwelling among us." I stopped. My heart was racing. I whispered aloud, "God became flesh." Tears filled my eyes. I couldn't explain it. I didn't even fully believe it. But something deep inside me stirred. That night I dreamed I was standing in a white room. It was empty except for one chair. A man was sitting in it, dressed in white. He didn't speak at first. He just looked at me. Then he stood up, walked toward me and said, "Hamza, I know you." I woke up gasping for air. My pillow was soaked with tears. For the first time in years, I felt seen. I couldn't tell anyone about the dream. Not my parents, not my brothers, not even my closest friend Ahmed. He would have reported me to the sheikh without hesitation. So I suffered in silence. I kept reading the Bible in secret. I downloaded sermons. I listened to testimonies. My room became my sanctuary, my prison, and my battlefield. The more I learned about Jesus, the more I began to question everything I had built my identity on. Not just Islam, but my pride, my status, my fear of being rejected. One night, I sat at my desk and wrote a letter to God. "If you are the God of the Bible, the God who became flesh, then I want to know you. Not just follow rules, not just pray 5 times a day. I want to know you, but I'm scared. I don't want to lose my family. I don't want to be alone. Please show me what to do." That same week, I was browsing online when I stumbled across a video from a former imam who had become a Christian. He said something that pierced my heart. The Jesus of the Bible isn't just a prophet. He is God in the flesh, and he came to set captives free. Captives. That's what I was. I was a captive to fear, to culture, to religion, and I needed to be free. I didn't know what that freedom looked like yet, but I was ready to take the first step. I began abstaining from the mosque, from the rituals, from the words that no longer gave me peace. But I didn't tell anyone. I still wore the mask. My father once told me, "You are my pride. You are the light of our name." If he discovered I had even questioned Islam, let alone opened a Bible, I knew I would no longer be a son to him. I would be a curse. One afternoon, I was alone in the house and couldn't resist the pull anymore. I pulled out my hidden phone, opened the Bible app, and went to the verse that had been haunting me, John 14:6. I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. That verse hit me like lightning. It wasn't just an invitation, it was a challenge. Jesus wasn't offering one of many paths. He was declaring he was the only path. I read it again and again. Each time, something inside me broke and rebuilt itself. I stared at the screen for what felt like an hour. Then I heard the front gate slam. My younger brother had come home early. I quickly hid the phone under my pillow and jumped to my feet. But I had made a mistake. The Bible app was still open. Later that night, he came into my room without knocking. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't curious. He was cold. "What were you reading today?" I froze. My heart sank. I said nothing. "I saw something on your phone," he continued. "You know if I tell Baba, he'll beat you, right? Maybe even throw you out." My hands were shaking. "I'm not doing anything wrong," I whispered, barely able to speak. "Reading their book is haram," he snapped. You could tell I was walking a dangerous path. I saw it clearly in his expression. The hatred was unmistakable. In that instant, perhaps driven by terror, perhaps by bewilderment, perhaps because he believed I was dragging our family's reputation through the mud. I pleaded with him to keep quiet. He promised he'd consider it. That evening, sleep escaped me completely. I lay there staring upward, repeating the same phrase endlessly, "God, if you exist, please help me." The following morning, chaos erupted. My father burst through my door before sunrise. His rage was overwhelming. My brother had revealed everything. "Are you an infidel?" he screamed. "You bring this corruption into our house. You dishonor the Quran." I attempted to clarify. I tried explaining I was merely exploring, that I wasn't abandoning him or our family. But his mind was made up. He struck me so forcefully, my ears buzzed. Then he hurled my books everywhere and left in fury. From that moment, I was confined to the house. They took my phone away. My bedroom became my cell. Nobody would speak to me. Not my brothers, not my mother, not even my cousin, who had once considered me his closest friend. It felt like I had ceased to exist. I endured 3 days of complete isolation. There were no more beatings, but the silence cut deeper. My father informed the community I suffered from a spiritual illness, that he was guiding me back to righteousness. They believed they were rescuing me, but internally I was already liberated. They simply hadn't realized it yet. On the 4th evening, something occurred that transformed everything. I experienced another vision. I found myself in a wasteland, solitary and parched. I witnessed a figure approaching me, radiant like sunlight. His features were unclear, but he knelt down and offered me a cup of water. "Drink," he said softly. When I did, I felt more alive than ever before. I awakened in tears. The next day, I reached a conclusion. I couldn't continue pretending. I had to go. Not just from the house, but from the entire system, the prison, the demands, the deceptions. I reached out to a Christian man I'd connected with online. We'd been communicating in secret for weeks. I told him I was prepared to leave. He provided me with the location of a refuge operated by believers. All I needed was to find my way out. 2 days after that, I waited until my father departed for morning prayers. I grabbed an old bag, slipped through the back entrance and fled. I didn't even have footwear. I ran through narrow passages and side streets until I found a cab and gave him the location. When I arrived, the door opened before I could knock. A woman with gentle eyes smiled at me and said, "Welcome home, brother." I fell into her embrace and wept like a child. For the first time in my existence, fear was gone. I was protected. I had absolutely nothing. No funds, no family, no prospects. But I had tranquility, and tranquility meant everything. Existence at the refuge was calm yet intense. I spent most hours in a tiny room with only a bed and a Bible. The initial nights brought no sleep. I kept remembering my father's expression, my younger brothers, the years I had spent instructing others from a book I no longer trusted. Shame would creep in like a burglar in darkness. Was I abandoning them, or had I finally embraced honesty? There was no simple resolution. But in the quiet, I started to mend. I studied the Gospel of Luke each morning. I didn't grasp everything. Some passages puzzled me, but others shattered me in the most beautiful way. Like when Jesus declared, Love your enemies and pray for those who mistreat you. I couldn't stop weeping because for years I had been conditioned to despise. I was taught that Christians had distorted the scriptures, that Jews were God's adversaries, that non-Muslims were kindling for hell. But Jesus didn't speak that way. He spoke of compassion, of pardoning, of restoration. And I craved that. I started joining secret Bible studies with other former Muslims who had abandoned their homes as I had. Some were younger than me, mere teenagers. Others were in their 40s, hiding from death sentences placed on their heads. We didn't need many words. Our expressions communicated everything. We were the abandoned, the rejected, the liberated. One night, the pastor who managed the house joined me on the front steps. He was an elderly man, reserved but steady, the kind of presence that brought comfort even when everything inside you was trembling. Hamza, I understand you're still seeking. That's fine. But Jesus isn't waiting for you to perfect yourself before approaching him. He already took the first step. He simply wants your heart. I remained silent. He went on. If you're prepared, we can pray together. No obligation, just an offer. I agreed. I don't remember the exact words I spoke that evening. I wasn't articulate. I didn't possess flawless theology. I just knew one truth. I believed Jesus was real. I believed he had been accompanying me long before I recognized him, and I wanted to follow him. So I lowered my head, and for the first time in my life, I didn't pray from duty or terror. Jesus, I don't understand everything about you, but I believe you're God's son. I believe you died for me, and I want to surrender my life to you. Help me, heal me, guide me. I said amen, and something shattered open within me. I can't describe it properly. It was like a wave of warmth flooding through my chest. Not just feelings, not just relief, but something profound, like I was finally home. I looked up and the pastor was also crying. Welcome to the family, he said. That night I slept with peace in my soul, genuine peace, not the kind I used to fake when lowering my head on a prayer rug, not the kind I forced through repetition, but the kind that came from knowing I was completely seen and still cherished. The following weeks were a whirlwind of learning and unlearning. I had to relearn how to think, how to trust, how to speak without filtering every word through the terror of blasphemy. Sometimes I still jumped when I heard the call to prayer echoing from a nearby mosque. Trauma clings like that, but I no longer submitted to it. I no longer belonged to fear. One day, I stood before a small group of believers in a hidden house church, and I shared my public testimony. My voice wavered, my hands shook, but I told them everything, about the verse that split my soul open, about the beating, the betrayal, the escape, and about the man in white who met me in the desert of my dreams. When I finished, they applauded, not from celebration but from shared suffering and shared hope. That week I was baptized in a nearby stream. The water was freezing. My body trembled, but as I emerged from it, I felt a burden lift I didn't even know I was still carrying. A man embraced me and said, "Your old life is buried, brother. You've been raised with Christ." I wept because it was true. I wasn't a Quran teacher anymore. I wasn't a prisoner of shame or a slave to approval. I was a child of God, and I was free. It's been 2 years since I departed. 2 years since I walked away from the life that defined me, the religion that shaped me, and the family that once revered the ground I walked on. I haven't heard my father's voice since the day he struck me and called me a disgrace. My mother called once, just once. She didn't say much. "You are dead to us. May Allah deal with you." Then the line went quiet. Sometimes I replay that call in my mind and wonder if she cried after hanging up, or if she erased my number and washed her hands clean. I'll never know. I used to think I needed their approval to survive. Now I just pray they'll one day discover the truth too. I still get nightmares. Sometimes I wake up sweating, hearing the Quran being recited in my dream, feeling the pressure of the life I left behind pulling me back. But those dreams don't control me anymore. They're just echoes. I spend my days now doing something I never imagined, telling the truth, not just to myself, but to others like me. There are hundreds, maybe thousands of people like me hiding in plain sight. Men and women who still bow in mosques with empty hearts, who teach words they no longer believe, who stay silent because the price of honesty is too high. I know that price, but I also know the reward. One of the first people I helped was a young man from my old city. He found me through a video testimony I had recorded under a new name, with my face blurred. He sent a single sentence in the first message, "Are you really one of us?" I knew exactly what he meant. We met in a public park. He looked terrified, like I once did, checking over his shoulder every 5 seconds, speaking in whispers. But I listened. I told him what someone once told me. You're not crazy, you're not alone, and you're not lost. That young man gave his life to Jesus 6 months later. Now he helps run a small discipleship group for ex-Muslims. Sometimes I just sit in the corner during those gatherings, watching them laugh and cry and pray in freedom. And I think, this is church, this is family, this is what I never thought was possible. I still use a different name publicly. I have to. My real name is known in places that would love to see me disappear. But when I pray, when I worship, when I write in my journal, I use my real name because God knows who I am. He knew me long before I taught my first Quran class, before I memorized the verses, before I stood on a pulpit and led others down a path I didn't yet understand. He saw me and he waited for me, patiently, lovingly, faithfully. I still have questions. I still wrestle. I still feel the sting of loss. But I'm no longer driven by fear. I'm driven by love. Real love. The kind I never found in the eyes of men who praised me for my knowledge but didn't care about my soul. The kind I never felt, bowing to words I didn't understand. The kind that doesn't demand perfection but invites surrender. Jesus found me in my pride. He found me in my confusion. He found me in the middle of a broken identity I didn't know how to fix, and he called me his. Not because I earned it, not because I deserved it, but because he is good. People ask me, don't you miss your old life? And the honest answer is, sometimes I miss being a son. I miss being a brother. I miss the sound of my mother's cooking and the laughter of my younger siblings in the courtyard. But I don't miss the lie. I don't miss the silence. I don't miss the empty rituals or the pain behind the praise, because now I live in truth and the truth has set me free. My name is Hamza. I was a Quran teacher, but now I follow Jesus Christ and I am not ashamed.